Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, verse by verse, book by book, chapter by chapter study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Proverbs chapter 29. And so let's get right to it. Proverbs chapter 29. Where? Okay. Oh, I'm going to get to my right. Come on. Here we go. All right. Where are you at? Okay. Chapter 29. All right. It says, the verse 1 who becomes stiff-necked after many reprimands will be shattered instantly beyond recovery. Now, this is talking about people who are constantly corrected. People are constantly, um, people are constantly, when you correct them, discipline them. Notice he said reprimand, and they don't change. Um, you can also say this is classic hardening of the heart, the hardness of the heart. Now, when you have a person like that, notice he said that they would be shattered. They are almost destining themselves to destruction. You can't argue with a person like that. Verse 2, when the righteous flourish, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, people groan. Now, this is something that the conservative right have always tried to push. Now, not in a most sincere way, but I'm going to say if you start with this principle, when the righteous flourish, those who are righteous, those who are governed by righteousness. Now, who established righteousness? Now, this is where we need to be careful. This is not the law of God as it was given to Moses. So here you're talking about the righteous precept or standard or principle. That's what you're talking about. In other words, the law of Moses as it was prescribed to Israel. One is not for everybody, and it's not good for everyone. We can go to a whole lot of other reasons why. Or a lot of times people may even say, if you break up the law of Moses, you have the ceremonial section of the law. Then you had um, the righteous or civil, and then you can say, well, out of the civil law, then maybe those laws you can extract principles of righteousness. Now, even the Ten Commandments, you have to be kind of careful about it, because how do you administer the commandments, right? However, living by the Ten Commandments would be good for any society. I'll say that again. Living by the Ten Commandments would be good for any society. Now, America doesn't live by the Ten Commandments. The Constitution of America omits the first two commandments because it can't. In other words, you cannot have freedom of religion and then obey the first commandments, because the first commandments tell us to only worship Yahweh or Jehovah or the Lord, whichever English translation you want to go with. So our American Constitution primarily tells us we can't do that. So the person wants to worship the Hindu, Allah, we can go on and on. Even Satan, our Constitution allows for religious uh, religious freedom. So with that, there's a flaw in that. So when he says when the righteous flourish, in other words, any nation that righteousness is the governing rule, that nation will flourish. When you think about when you go the other way, well, we got plenty of examples of that. Verse 3, a man who loves wisdom brings joy to his father. The one who consorts with prostitutes destroys wealth. Now, I can't help but if Jesus had this also in mind when he talked about the prodigal son. Think about the last statement there. But he said, when a person loves wisdom, they will bring joy. A person who loves wisdom, who lives by wisdom, who gains wisdom, will be a joy to their father. Verse 4, by justice, a king brings stability to the land. But a man who demands contribution demolishes it, or bribes, right? Think about that. When you think about our laws, you think about the recent debate. Why did it take so long for them to settle the debt ceiling? Right. You know why? Because everyone else was trying to put their hand in the pocket. In other words, greed. In other words, something that was going to affect them that would have also had greed in it, and that's going to profit them, benefit them. That's the politics of Washington, D.C. Notice he said, but by justice. Now think about this. Our country was birthed in injustice. And think about the turmoil that it wrought for 80% of its history, from 1776 to 1965. Slavery, segregation. That's not what it was. Injustice. By justice, a king brings stability to the land. Verse 5. A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. Verse 6. An evil man is caught by sin, but the righteous one sings and rejoices. Verse 7. The righteous person knows the rights of the poor, but the wicked one does not understand these concerns. Now, he doesn't say what the rights of the poor are. And of course, depending on what nation you live in, that is subjective. Verse 8, mockers inflame a city, but the wise turn away anger. If a wise man goes to court with a fool, there will be ranting and raving, but no resolution. Oh boy, just watch court TV. I'm just kidding, but he said if a wise man goes to court with a fool, in other words, you can't reason with a fool. You can't reason with a fool. And then when you look at all that goes into the makings of a fool, anger, rage, selfishness, not unreasonable, all these things here. Verse 10, bloodthirsty men hate an honest person, but the upright care about him. Verse 11, a fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man holds it in check. If this is not a lesson for most of us, think about this. A fool gives full vent to his anger. We're kind of living in a time, for example, where road rage is a good example of this. Road rage is spiking. Notice he said, if you give into your anger, a fool gives into his anger because the heartaches that come as a result. Verse 12. If a ruler listens to lies, all its officials will be wicked. Again, so much truth in that. Okay, if a ruler listens to lies, if a ruler listens to lies, I'm one thing that comes to mind. Now, keep this in mind that there are many examples, of this, many examples. So I'm thinking about one that happened that got us into almost a 20-year war. Lies. lies. Okay, 20 years lies. That's one of the more recent things we have. If a ruler listens to lies, all his officials will be wicked. Now, by the way, it also tarnished the reputation of the blemish on one of the great statesmen of our time. Okay, actually, that statesman he chose not to run because, as the story goes, his wife was in fear. But that person could have been the first black president. We're going back to the 90s. All right, verse 13. The poor and the oppressor have this in common. The Lord gives light to both of them. Now that's kind of interesting. Sometimes we don't like these kind of truths, but notice he said the Lord gives life to both of them, both the oppressor and the poor. Verse 14. A king who judges the poor with fairness, his throne will be established forever. Again, we see a lot about the poor. A lot about the poor. Verse 15. A rod of correction imparts wisdom, but a youth left to himself is a disgrace to his mother. Now, again, we see this principle here, this wisdom. A rod of correction imparts wisdom. So the difference here, and as I've said before, when we see these verses here, we have to always balance them. In other words, when we're talking about raising kids, there are three parts. You don't focus on one. So we're not just focusing on correction, but for example, the entire book of Proverbs here talks about nurturing and instruction. And then it also talks about discipline. In other words, you need all three. Okay, you need all three to produce wise children, godly children. But correction, nevertheless, discipline. So it's just a rod of correction imparts wisdom. But then notice the last. But a youth left to himself will disgrace his mother. I want to focus on that statement. When you leave a child to himself, and I want you to think about something here. I want you to think about something. Children have to be taught, have to receive instruction. So if you don't give them that, and as a parent, your obligation, your duty, once children are conceived, your instruction is clear. Your instruction is clear. You need to raise your kids. Your careers, your goals are put on hold. So in other words, if you haven't already done that, and many don't, then once your children are conceived, your duty as a parent is to instruct them, raise them, care for them, love them, nurture them, and discipline them. That's your duty as a parent. So if you don't, so now he says here, a child left to themselves, a child left to themselves will be a disgrace to their mother. Well, a child left to themselves will also be a harm to themselves. You as a parent are damaging the children when you leave them to themselves. So there are many ways that parents, again, leave their children. For example, you can say, here's a picture. Your child is at home. Your 11-year-old, 12-year-old at home. Why you go out because you want me time. right? I'm sorry, me time is not the most important thing when it comes to raising your kids. Here's my thing: if you do it right, you have plenty of me time when they're grown, when they're adults. Okay, but again, you as a parent, your greatest concern and effort and purpose is to say, let me produce godly children. That should be your greatest concern. So now, here's the thing: you don't have to have a degree in child psychology. You don't have to have a degree in theology. Here's the thing: if you're there, if you're there, that's the that's the majority of the battle. Because if you're there, then of course, following scripture, you're instructing them, nurturing them, and then disciplining them. Because if you're there, you can see. So many parents are surprised when their kids do things, sinful things. So you start with the fact that all of your children, as we all are born in sin. So if you leave them to themselves, if you leave your children to themselves, that inclination is going to be nourished. Whatever the inclination is, right? We all have them. We can be hypocritical and judge others for it. So, but we all have them. So you have a person that, if they are nourished, could turn out to be murderers and serial killers, right? But how about some of the issues we're dealing with now when people have inclinations towards same-sex attraction? Or as we're dealing with it now, transgenderism. See, people, we can have that. Or how about a person that all of a sudden has a fascination with fire, right? Arson. We won't call it arson at their age, but all of a sudden they learn to burn things. So as parents, you see that. So then you instruct, you nurture, you discipline, right? The rod imparts wisdom. You don't do that. You discipline them. If you say, oh, you started a fire. Well, starting a fire could burn our home down. We don't have a place to live. Burning the house down could cause injury to a person. Would you want your loved ones to be burned or even die? That's the wisdom of disciplining a person with an inclination, see, to arson. Or if you see a child that beats a dog to death, okay, serial killer in the making, right? You're nurturing things. How about curiosity? Sexual curiosity. See, if you're there, you can head those things off. Oh my God, I found my kids, messing with each other. Okay, if you're there, you're going to see it. And again, you're going to instruct, you're going to nurture, you're going to discipline. But if the child is left to themselves, those inclinations will grow. Those sinful urges will grow and develop. Then it comes to a point where you can't turn. It's hard to turn them away. That's why, if you remember, he says, discipline your child while they are young. That's another key. Discipline your child while they is young. Okay, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. See you in the next study.